I had millions, tens of millions of dollars at my disposal, I wouldn't have taken a dime of that money. And to think that your moral compass is based upon profits, to me, I'm sorry, it's a difficult thing for me to be able to figure out how anybody can rationalize purposefully laundering money for drug organizations that are throwing poison all over the streets of the United States.
Okay, this is where you and I always diverge a little bit, and so that we can understand that we're talking apples and apples here.
Okay.
In my philosophy, and I have 4 children, 2 grandchildren, a third on the way. I mean, I'm not an isolated hermit individual out there in some utopian whatever in my own head. I just imagine that I prefer to have a safe, healthy environment for my expanding family. I personally, truly believe that they are safer, more prosperous, and a better environment where you don't have a central plan, an authority somewhere making laws saying what I can or cannot do with my property or my body or my money or my liberty, mine. When they start doing that, it is guaranteed every single time. Not some of the time, most of the time, every time that you create a black market with prohibitions of anything. And the worst sort of people are profiting from that prohibition and from someone inside like you were. I can't imagine that you didn't see it on the corruption of U.S. officials, law enforcement, the banking industry, the regulators, the Department of Justice. I mean, it is a corrosive thing that permeates society based on a single concept that some people think they can tell what other people to do with their property or their body. And it manifests itself in all kinds of ways, including little stacks of paper or big stack, pallets of paper. And I'm just going, this is to think that you're in a... Now, I can see from your book and your experience that you can offer yourself as a consultant and be of value to corporations that in this current environment, they would choose not to run afoul of. They'd like to be able to say, hey, man, we did our due diligence and we had, Robert Mazur come in and he hooked us up, explained it to us, and we kept ourselves out of trouble. But the big, giant, making money, bad BCCI crowd and Wells Fargo, Bank, name them, they know. Heck, half the time, the reason they get with a slap on their wrist is it was some government agency that was profiting from it anyway. And there's always the drug dealers want the prohibition. That's how they make their money. I mean, we just go back to alcohol prohibition, the same freaking thing, the same way. Hell, it's the same families. So I'm just going, all right, so law enforcement benefits too. So I'm just, for you to be surprised by this is interesting, but I'm looking at what is your moral compass that you're talking about. Is it because it's a law, because drugs need to be eradicated and the government needs to do it? I'm wondering where your moral compass is.
Well, to address some of the things you were talking about of regulating the access to things that the government calls illegal, you seem to feel as though that if there was no prohibition on crack cocaine, methamphetamine, and all those other drugs, that there would be a less presence of it, there would be less money generated by it, by bad people. I don't share that view, and I offer that you look at the instance of OxyContin, oxycodone, a legal drug, which you can
No,
obtain.
It's not. It's regulated all the heck.
Oh, yeah, it's regulated.
It's got its own black market because of the regulation.
Well, okay. That's your view. So, but I don't share that view, and I just do believe.
No, but why? I understand you represent a lot of people. Heck, maybe not the majority anymore, but still a lot of people. Here we have, whenever you have an initiative to decriminalize drugs anywhere, it's like 70, 80%. So people know this drug war thing's done. Heck, we got 2 presidential Republican candidates on stage saying do away with the drug war. So I don't mean just marijuana. I mean getting rid of the drug war. And this is a paradigm that's shifting. So I have to ask you, someone in your position that saw the worst of it, and like you say, man, this funds terrorism. It may very well. It absolutely unequivocally does.
Yeah, it's called the CIA.
So I'm going, so the thing is I'm going, you pick your poison and who's doing it. The U.S. government to say that they don't benefit from this, if not indirectly, die freaking rectly. Here I am on YouTube. Here you go. Hello, CIA. Don't think I don't know you make money on this, okay? This is not like, kind of made it up. It's documented. Heck, you guys admit to it. So I'm going...
I haven't seen any solid proof that says that the CIA is purposely...
Well, you know what? I'm willing to bet some money.
Drugs.
Okay? The reason right before the conversation, we started our conversation, 5 minutes before, I'm on the phone 15, 20 minutes with Sheriff Arpaio here in Maricopa County. Mm-hmm. Now, Sheriff Arpaio was DEA. And he was before, when he retired, he came sheriff here back in 92. I mean, that was a long time ago. And he and I have a relationship back. He knows that I know, he knows I know, he knows I know. I mean, this is, please. When he first came here, the first thing as sheriff, he goes, we're going to put a bubble over Maricopa County, and every freaking car going in and out of the county is going to be searched for drugs. We're going to stop drugs. And that got beaten back by a county attorney and everything. And we got a big... chalk the police event thing that's going on down at the county jail tomorrow, and that's going to be a woohoo and press deal and so on. We're working to make sure nobody dies. But the point is that he's all about the theater of this thing, but he knows what the drug war does. He knows how corrosive it is. I mean, he freaking knows. I ain't going into details, but he knows. So I'm going, all right, where's the benefit in this? How does this benefit society? Where do we really need this largest percentage, certainly enormous incarceration of Americans around this issue? And I have to ask, from him, he doesn't even pretend that it's like, it's going to solve anything. But I have to ask you, I mean, is this we're just not doing enough enforcement? We need to lock more people up?
Absolutely not. My position on that is that we need to be doing more with respect to education and treatment. I do believe that the majority of our prison population are sick people who are in jail because they were involved in the lower levels of drug trafficking. I think that they get targeted oftentimes, unfortunately, because Congress decides that they're going to measure the efficiency of an agency based upon the number of arrests and the number of seizures that are made.
And how much money they get in RICO, and how much money the prison industrial complex makes, and how much...
If I could just finish what I was going to say, I'd appreciate it.
Say it.
Okay, I'm trying. What I'm saying is that those people wind up getting targeted, unfortunately, because Congress does not take the time to look behind the numbers, and the agencies, some people, do the something terrible that they shouldn't do, which is how do we get the numbers up, and they wind up going after the little guys, and the bigger guys and the resources don't get on it. And I'm not saying that they do that across the board, because there are some very, very important cases that are made all over the globe by a small percentage of those who are involved in this war on drugs. That should be the norm. That shouldn't be the exception. And I couldn't agree with you more that our prisons are not filled to capacity with the people who are really the worst of the worst who are involved in that.
Yeah, they get the wrist slap. They're the ones that get a fine. They get a little bit of seizure. They
don't even get seen because the amount of resources that it takes to try to take them on isn't something that we apparently have the stomach to want to do, which we should.
There is no amount of resources. That's my point. You are never going to go up against an army. Look what's happening in Mexico right now. The best thing that ever happened to Mexico would be if they decriminalized drugs. And that's a very serious issue right now. They have an entire campaign that's coming from the people there. We've been talking to people. It's no more blood. We're done. In the drug war, it's mothers. By the tens of thousands of people that are slaughtered in mass graves over this drug war. At some point, you start to get that, I think it's not working. When is it?
I agree that there's too much put on the supply side, not enough put on education, and not enough put on treatment. But I don't believe that you can completely ignore the individuals who are the masterminds behind some of these huge organizations.
Of course they get ignored. Of course they get ignored. They got the money. Heck, who do you think it is that is the most adamant about not ending the drug war? The drug dealers. Their whole livelihood evaporates. All this profit for terrorism they're talking about. Buy, ounce of marijuana, fund terrorism. I go, are you freaking kidding me? Make it illegal, you fund terrorism. This is so stupid. And what's happening is that you're seeing it on the podium in a GOP Republican debate. Two presidential candidates up there saying, stop it. Stop it.
Have they said that they thought that it would be a wise thing to legalize methamphetamine and crack cocaine?
Hell, Ron Paul's talking heroin. Isn't that good enough for you?
Who's the second candidate who
New Mexico,
that?
Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson came to Arizona.
Presidential candidate?
Yeah. On the debate, up there in the podium, man, legalize drugs. This is way more than you think. When Governor Johnson came to Arizona, it was early 2000. I think it was about 2000. And I remember a reporter called me at my restaurant, and he says, Ernie, man, Gary Johnson on the Senate floor or the House floor in Arizona, the border states, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California, came to Arizona to do a big thing about immigration. And Gary Johnson, as governor of New Mexico, said, you know what? You want to solve a bunch of this violence problem, decriminalize drugs. Boom, done. And, that made a big deal out. Now he's running for president, and Dr. Paul's doing his thing. So this is an entire generation next. These young kids, heck, they're not even young anymore. They're getting in their 30s. And I'm going, they already know. It's not like you got to convince them or you're going to change their mind or something. They know. They know it's easier for a junior high kid to go out and buy, drugs than it is to go get a beer. We know the truth. We know the truth. And there's nothing you can say that's going to change this other than coming out and saying we need more rigorous enforcement of the big bad guys. They're the ones behind keeping it illegal so they can make the money. It's phenomenal to me, that especially someone that's been inside. And I can see the benefit of your book and your advocacy is to keep the banks and local and so on that need to protect themselves against the bad guy because they're not big enough. They're not the big bad guys that are laundering the money for the different agencies that are benefiting from it anyway. And that's a good question for you. As you're inside the Escobar cartel, there had to be information flowing to you of corrupt individuals in the United States government that were benefiting and or allowing this to happen.
Not necessarily allowing the drug money laundering to happen, but individuals who most definitely were hired by the bank because they were known to be influential political people and became somewhat, in the bank's mind, insurance policies, so that if they did get a problem, they'd have somebody to turn to in their corner that they were going to try to get to be able to get them out of their problem. I mean, the examples include the former Secretary of Defense, Clark Clifford, who was put in position as the president of a bank that was secretly owned by this foreign institution. There was, and Jimmy Carter, to whom they gave all kinds of contributions to his charitable organizations because they wanted to ingratiate themselves upon him. Andrew Young, Bert Lance. I found ties also to individuals very close to Richard Nixon. So, and I found ties to high-level political figures in other parts of the world. I mean, the guy who was my investment advisor at this bank was a Pakistani whose father was formerly the head of the ISI. And the ownership of the bank included a guy who was at one time the head of Saudi intelligence. So there was a definite involvement of political types and intelligence people in the intelligence community.
Robert, you got to help me out here. I mean, this is think about the billions. Heck, we may be getting into trillions of dollars over not that long. 10, 20 years. $400
billion a year is probably a pretty good estimate.
So
$400 billion a year.
Trillions of dollars a year that are going to the worst sort of exactly the kind of people that you want to stop because of the drug war. I mean, you don't see that?